Yeah, I'm wondering here with the charter board item, do we know what the budget to actual is here? I think that'd be helpful. You know, we see that we're carrying over $50,000 and that there's not an increase or decrease, but ultimately, what have we seen over this past year in expenses? I think that would be helpful.
If you can stand by for 45 seconds, Counselor, I'll have that.
Yeah, or that can go on the parking lot, you know, and you can pull that. I'd just like to see that at some point. Thank you.
And the other thing we could do is we could have council actually had assigned to them an outside firm to review the charter board expenses because there was, you know, their solicitor was making lots of claims about conflict. We said, fine, we'll have an independent review, and they're kind of like standing ready to update council. So if we wanted to put that as a parking lot, we could bring them in maybe next week or within the next 2 weeks to give council a briefing on that.
Yeah, and everyone needs to understand, you know, it can be one charter issue can blow the budget way up. So it's really hard to budget, but we have to look at the concept of the charter board in more detail and what is and what shouldn't be going through there. And, you know, to what extent is it necessary? Because it's a stepping stone, but it's a lot of added costs. And we can't necessarily get into that tonight, but we need to spend time on it.
Just to answer the question, we transferred funding about a month or so ago. So there's 80,000 for this year. So we would have transferred 30,000. Year to date, there's been 63,000 in expenses. And there's still 15,000 left through the end of the year to cover any additional ones that come in. With that, I believe we would move on to the parking lot questions. If there are no if there are no questions on law, charter board, or ethics additional. Okay, from October 12th, the fringe benefit cost, we discussed that the information was shared with council in the public meeting. In terms of funding for the consultant for the 275, without getting any additional information from council, I put in a line of 10,000 just as a placeholder. Any thoughts on that? Increase, decrease? Okay.
Well, I would ask Donna, you worked on the job description there, and you're kind of spearheading that. That's the consultant for the coordination of the 275th, correct?
Right.
So is that what you had in mind and what we've allocated in the past years in instances like this where we've brought in a consultant to assist on a special project?
Right. We all discussed this in pretty much detail. I think Dave and Linda can weigh in as well. It seems to fall within the boundaries of what others have been. I know we had some discussions with Fred, law regarding that. Fred, you might want to weigh in as well.
I'm not sure exactly what I'm weighing in on now. I know we discussed before, but I think, setting making sure that there's an allocation for that and then ultimately we'll decide it.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to have a maximum that it didn't go beyond. So we opted for that as opposed to like a per hour kind of rate. I don't know if that helps answering any questions.
No, this isn't the solicitor. This is just the committee, the consultant for the 275.
Right, but I guess Linda had posed a question to Fred regarding that, correct, Fred?
Right, yeah, and I think for now, the important thing is to allocate the funds, and then the committee can decide how it, or the committee can decide what the
Disbursement.
person will be and what they'll be doing and what the engagement will be and how, contractor versus part-time employee, temporary employee, intern, et cetera.
Mhm. Does
Um,
that help, Lucy?
It does. The other question I have is kind of looking ahead, the $10,000 is set aside for the individual. Will that person be doing some development work or, are there other costs to be anticipated in terms of marketing, materials, et cetera, other expenditures? Could we anticipate that we might see something like that as this person starts to conduct their work?
I think all those are valid questions. There's certainly a development aspect to it in that we want some money. We're hoping for donations. We're hoping for some money raised to help with some of the events that we're looking at. Frank had a very good suggestion. Frank, you might want to just quickly emphasize that in terms of how an account would be set up. He and Linda have worked on that. So Frank, if you'd like to explain that, Maria,
Sure.
weigh in.
Well, certainly we want to look for corporate sponsorships and private donations. And it's important that we have some kind of vehicle of a 501c3 because that's usually a needed vehicle in order to receive those types of fundings for what we're doing. But it doesn't make a lot of sense for us independently to create a 501c3 when it would be sunset with the next 2 years. So usually in a situation like this, you do an umbrella arrangement, which is very common, where you work with another nonprofit and who's involved there permanently in it, and they would accept the funds on our behalf. So our committee that we put together, the small committee, Maria, the city auditor, myself, and Abe, we're going to take a look at what would be an ideal organization. First of all, their willingness or capacity to be able to be that umbrella for us, because we certainly want to use minimal amount of public funds, but we certainly historically we've used public funds before, but we want to keep it at a minimum. And the idea behind the consulting position is it's a lot more feasible, flexible, and to have a consultant than having a part-time employee. Because having a part-time employee is actually a lot of restrictions, there's limitations on the amount of hours. So having a consultant position to be able to help us prepare for this event is very critical. So that seems to be the best venue to go about this. So we have a job, I think this mentioned already, there's been a job description, the expectations, it's been very thorough that Linda put together. And I imagine next year there'll be periodic reports to council, a lot of reports on what we're going to be doing. So the work of the committee will be expanded and council will be updated on a regular basis. And we have a steering committee, as we already know, in place. That's where we're starting with.
Have we advertised that position yet?
It's not going to be, from my understanding, it's not going to be advertised as a traditional job position, but that's in the works. We have a meeting coming up. We can finalize that.
Yeah, I think we better, and that's separate and apart from the budget discussion, but we.
Well,
really-
right. I think we have a committee. We're going to talk about that. I think the goal is to be able to have somebody in mind, have this whole thing settled by the end of the year so they can start
Easily.
first of the year.
Easily.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're close to that.
Okay, and that's not part of this. So, Lucine, any other questions you have about this position or anyone else? Jahani,
And it's not about the position. I know we went from fringe, and we're going down that line of this parking lot, right? Now, has fringe been updated and corrected across departments, or we're still waiting on data for that?
We continue to make edits across all of the departments on fringes.
So before we approve this budget, obviously, everything will be up to par.
Yes.
One other thing regarding the city council budget I'm looking at is the part-time wages, the city council solicitor.
No, that's the city councilors.
Oh.
Right, that's the seven
that's
council
us.
members.
Okay, where is the city councilor position? I'm sorry, city
Line-
solicitor.
Line 53.
Legal services. It's highlighted, 50,000.
So this position wouldn't be subject to any fringe.
No, there wouldn't
No.
be an employee.
And that's why we're looking at the consulting concept, because not just the flexibility that this is not a permanent position as created at the moment. So you're looking at a position that's to serve a one-time event. So we don't have to worry about fringe benefits or anything. You're paying for contractual services.
No, I was referring to, yeah, the
He's referring to the
City-
attorney, Frank.
council solicitor. Sorry.
I apologize
Yeah,
for,
no, you're
I
good.
apologize. Yeah, I missed that. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Disregard.
No worries. Thank you.
On the August 12th list of city-owned properties, I have to defer to Public Works for that one. The October 18 IMA update, I'll need to defer to the solicitor for that one. Fred, do you have anything on?
Yeah, and we should still push that out a couple weeks towards the end of the budget season. Because it doesn't really impact budget, but it's, in fact, I would take that off of budget and just put it as schedule it for a cow at some point. I mean, you can leave it on, but I think I'll work with Linda on getting this for maybe a December committee of the whole, either at the very end or maybe even after budget season.
We held that review session. The motorcycles, do we have the chief on the line tonight?
Yeah, he told me that was covered when he did his budget review.
Okay. The forest study, RE Mount Penn and Eversink, I don't have anything on that. Go ahead, Stan.
Neversink is part of the Berks Conservatory, and they are spearheading that. We really don't have much interplay. There was some conversations regarding a trail system. However, they are not part of the Mount Penn Preserve. There is, and Linda can explain a little more, it's a county-driven sponsorship through DCNR. And we will not hear anything probably until probably Q3 of 2022 on the award.
Do we
Jamar?
have I'm sorry, go ahead, Counselor.
Oh,
Sal.
that's okay. For all intents and purposes, the Berks Conservatory is Berks Nature, correct?
I
So-
believe that's the interplay, correct?
Yeah, so we might want to list it as Berks Nature because I don't know that the conservatory even technically is operating as a conservatory anymore. And also I was wondering if we go back to October 12th, the list of city-owned properties, et cetera, if that's appropriate for a separate committee of the whole, and possibly, the update, could be all encompassing of what we've asked for from Public Works. So I know on Monday we asked for the kind of an overview of what's happening for downtown for the holiday festivities, I think, or, so like if there's a couple of different topics that they want to cover at that time, or if they feel that is enough of a topic just to put on the agenda by itself to dive into. I think that would be necessary because there's a lot in that one request there. The list of the properties, the lands, the buildings, identify. I mean, I'm imagining they're putting that together.
There is a master list that was accumulated probably 5 years ago. However, because of all the changes that have happened, I know Cindy was working on it, but this is going to be rather extensive. There's going to be needed conversations with the rec board, the people that operate the facilities through rec, that we do not receive revenue. However, we are, and I hate to say, the city is on the hook for the major upkeep as well, which can be rather extensive. Yeah, this is going to be very, very, it will be very encompassing, and it will take some time for the people to put it together. We just, right now, we don't have staff to do it. And with the 60 some properties, it's going to get extensive.
So fair enough, Stan. I'm understanding then we're not going to see this really prior to having to move this budget forward. Where would you say this falls on your priority as Public Works to really be tackling this list and the partnerships, whatever MOUs are in place, the operational costs? Where is that in your Public Works priorities?
Considering I met with McCormick Taylor on a bunch of items in our paving, road construction projects. We have the dam. I think it should be a priority 1 to a 5. It should be minimally a 4, to be honest, because the city owns many properties and they're on various phases of disrepair, and we need to grab them. I would love for us to put a person on it right now. We just don't have the staff to do it, but I think it should be a minimum of 4 out of a 5.
Okay. All right. Well, if we can, then let's put it on as an agenda item in the future to discuss a little bit further in terms of how you see that happening and what that looks like for Public Works.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stan, can you touch on item number 3 under October 19? And Counselor Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like we're conflating 2 issues. Reading Iron Playground, separate from the 875,000 that was budgeted for parks and playground upgrades. Linda?
No clue. I don't remember.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
if you look at it, if I may, the 875 was allocated with the mindset of redoing existing parks, playgrounds, inclusive types of and multi-generational apparatus, along with upgrades to walls, the things that haven't been touched in many, many years. Now, the Reading Iron Park and Playground funding specifically, it's approximately 650,000. We have a memo that, Jamar, can you put the memo up, please? I was trying to do that on my computer and I could not. And you'll see that there's a quick breakdown of what was discussed before. There's an extensive amount of work that is being done to it, and Cindy Kastner did a nice job of putting that all together.
so yeah, I prepared the memo. I'll send it out before when we're done tonight. We have grant funding from CDBG in the amount of 300,000. We have grant funding from DCNR also in the amount of 300,000 for a total of 600,000 for the project. It addresses a safety issue on the north end of the site. It will properly define the soccer field. Stan mentioned the inclusive play apparatus, some safety surfacing, pervious surfacing on the basketball court, ADA walkways, parking, as well as landscaping and improvements to lighting in the park. This is some of the inclusive equipment that will be purchased to replace the current equipment. Here is an example of some of the more inclusive equipment that we'd like to get. And then we also include a current site development drawing to indicate the areas of the park that are going to be updated. And the squares identify the specific locations of that. And we'll get that sent out. Maria Rodriguez?
Thank you. That would be part of the CIP budget?
No,
No?
I
But the
mentioned
the-
at the top, it's CDBG and
Okay,
DCNR funded.
so nothing is coming out of the general fund?
No,
No, okay, thank you.
No, and Linda, Linda
Yeah.
had raised a point in terms of the monies. No, the allocated funds in CDBG and the grant funding is different. No, and you're asking that monies that's in our CIP is totally different than this funding source.
Yeah, which was the point I started out at. The 875 is totally unrelated to Reading Iron Playground.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on, City Park Master Plan. I believe this was sent out on October 20th.
Can you excuse?
Capital Project Progress Report. Do we have that one, Stan?
No, we do not. It was in our CIP of what we delivered this past, I believe it's 2 weeks ago. It's nothing has necessarily changed. It's just we're moving forward. But if I may, there is also a highlight in October 19th. You'll see provide agreements, and I think that should be wrapped into the list of city-owned properties also. There are many organizations that work out of city properties that that either other organizations regulate the usage, and there are other agreements that should come to light. So may we add those items together, please?
Looks like Donna has her hand up. You're on mute, Donna.
As a part of that, as we move forward, reviewing any MOUs that we have with different organizations using city-owned buildings. I think that's something that's more for the administration and legal to consider, but I do think now's the time to review those. And I don't know how many there are. There's certainly Pagoda Foundation, Pagoda Skyline. Stan, are there more than that?
Yes, we have to look at the individual ones that we have with the Rec Commission. We have to, and there are other subset agreements that the Rec Commission has with, say, for example, the operators of the baseball field at Bear Park.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
and the city's required to pick up the trash, but you know, sometimes it could be 4 guys a day, which is rather costly for the city.
So we can review all these, put that on the agenda if that's okay with Abe and the administration.
Yeah, so I put separate Cal requested, and really all of those are tied in. The provide agreements, as well as the list of city-owned properties.
Okay, yeah, that would be great to see which ones they are and how we need to deal with it, if there's a need to deal. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if I, Jamar, I'm sorry. If I can just support Donna, what Donna just said, in my experience, when we were working through the intermunicipal agreement with the improvement district, it had not been reviewed or revised in 15 years. So I agree that if we can get a schedule of, first understand what contracts or MOUs, et cetera, are in place with what organizations, and then have a calendar set up for an annual or, even several year, even 5-year review, 3 to 5 years, that would help because, we're looking at how do we increase income, for the city, but this would be an area where maybe we're reducing our expenditures. So it may seem small or frivolous, but if we really start to dive into it, it might create a positive impact for the budget process.
The contact to state legislators, I think looks like a individual, not necessarily budget item to address. The additional part-time employee in the auditor's office at a cost of approximately 20,000. I don't know that there's been any discussion about that.
I did send an email to all, I believe, to all council members. And the reason that I'm asking for a part-time person is because I would like the city auditor office to do more audit. I think the city's in need of more audit in relation to all the projects and everything that is going on, that currently is going on here. So by having a part-time person, that person will pick it up the daily routine. And I was thinking about it like a senior college student, you know, to bring it on board, and thinking loud that if we hire a senior college student, that could be a potential professional employee for the city in the future.
I know we're in a committee, but can I get clarity? Is that approved by council? Is it not? Councilor Cepeda Freitas, you have your hand up, but we can't hear you.
Yes, so I'm not sure what the format is to approve Maria's request. She did email the body and we were all, I think for the most part, the majority were in favor, but I'm not sure what process we need to put into place to make that happen. But I wanted to backtrack a little bit. I had my hand up earlier in regards to city properties and the agreements. What is the timeline on that? When should we anticipate having that for a committee of the whole?
Not till January, maybe, Stan, right?
It's a huge undertaking with many hours and many personnel that would be devoted away from something else, just so everyone knows that I think what you should do in terms of having an extensive study, we have a base, and out of that base, we should all work together with legal, administration, public works. But then there's going to have to be an understanding with other organizations need to come to the table and participate fully, because that sometimes is the issue.
I'm just trying to understand. So do we or do we not have a list of our properties?
We have a general list, absolutely.
Okay, and then we know who's occupying every property, correct?
No,
We don't know that.
no, there's some, no, it's not occupying or the use.
Or
We don't know
utilizing.
anything that we don't know everything that the rec board is doing. So that we don't know everything that, say, at Rotary Park is happening. There's sometimes we are in the dark, and that's been that way for a long time. This is going to be, if this has to be done right correctly the first time, and I'm so agreement. I really agree.
So what's the issue, guys? We're trying to do what here?
I was trying to get clarity on whether the part-time wages were approved for the auditor's office, so I can make the adjustment right now.
Well, you can put them in there. I mean, we can get a general consensus. Does everybody generally approve? Does anybody object to the part-time position? I mean, obviously, we're not voting on it now, but we're putting it in the budget. Well, if there's any disdain for it, now would be the time to express it. Otherwise, it'll be in the budget and we can approve it at that time. Does anybody object to the part-time position in the?
I totally support it.
Yeah, so we're not taking a formal vote, but we're just getting a consensus here. Everybody seems to generally support it. Let's put it in.
Yeah, that, I was just trying to make sure, Jeff.
No problem. No, I was a little distracted. I just want to make sure we were clear on it. We don't take formal votes at this time, but we can certainly say, hey, yeah, we think we agree with that. Till it's finally approved, Maria, as you understand, nothing's final till it's voted on. but
Yes.
Sounds
No.
like it will stand. Go
And I
ahead,
want to
Ms.
say,
Dean. I'm sorry.
and I want to say thank you, you know, for taking the step to move forward with this. I mean, I know a final decision needs to be made at the end of the day. And like as I mentioned, the reason for this, because that will free more time for myself and for the auditing coordinator to do more audits. When you're working on audit, you need time to concentrate, dig into the information. But by the same token, I also would like to meet with the administration, because when an audit is conducted, I can make recommendations, but then it will be up to the administration to take action on the recommendation made on the audits.
I'm always available to have meetings about follow-up to the recommendations.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Um,
and
there
that's a
was-
separate
Thank you.
discussion, but yeah, but as it relates to the budget, we can just take a consensus. We're not voting on the budget, so we can at least, just take a general understanding of where people stand on it, because, these things, when you have a parking lot, we usually have it dwindle down by the night of the budget. There's some instances where we have 2 or 3 items that remain open and we have to haggle them out the night. It's not very often that's happened. But, I know, Linda, you've been through some of these with us, and Donna and Marcia, where, we voted for, we voted against, and at the end of the day, we had to see what was left available to support.
Mhm.
So it was always a trickle down effect. But, in this case, if there's a consensus for it, we can say, yeah, that's a change we know we want to make ahead of time. So.
Thank you, Jeff. And
So,
thank you.
Yeah,
everyone.
Lucy, did you have a comment? I'm sorry, because
Not, I think I just wanted to make sure my hand was up. It was not in opposition. So you were asking, is anybody opposed? No, certainly not opposed. In fact, I think that there might be a direct correlation between an audit coordinator and being able to do more audits, and the topic of, the public properties and being able to almost, conduct an audit for that and do it the right way, as Stan has mentioned. So I'm definitely in favor.
This is Frank, just to add in, we do have a list, so we can provide what we have so far to work off of that. So it's not like we don't have anything. So we do have an inventory of different agreements and arrangements. Some are written, some are verbal, but we do have a starting point. So what we can do is provide council that list, and then we can build off of that and have an audit of all that. But we do have some data to work off of.
Good to know. Thank you, Frank.
On October 5th, the demolition funding amounts in CDBG and the general fund, we covered that. In terms of timeframes for using demo funds, I would have to defer to the CD director for that.
He's not connected.
There were October 29th updates that weren't included on this parking lot list, but they are in the copy of the budget that's on the website. It includes an adjustment to the library CIP of $6,200. This was needed after specifications came back from the vendor. Under finance, we're requesting, one second, let me pull that one up. Requesting contracted services funding for staffing flexibility. We've had significant difficulty with hiring qualified people for some of the positions that we have that are still vacant. We'd like to reach out to a temp agency to help us source candidates for those positions. And that 30,000 would cover the finder's fee, if you will, for them getting us qualified candidates. The Counselor Cepeda Freitas.
Is this specifically as it relates to the finance department, or is this multiple vacant positions throughout the city?
Finance only. That's what, yeah.
Thank you.
The last one, under the police department, there was an adjustment under CIP of 150,000 to cover phase 2 of their CAD RMS project. And I believe we mentioned that as well when we reviewed the police department budget that night. November 8th, we discussed seeking an increase from the county commissioners. That's not something I could do right now. Adding funding for 2 exterior benches at the Northeast and Northwest Library. I'm unclear on that request. Is that to be added to CIP or what? I'm not sure on that one. And then
Bronwyn didn't really say. She just said that she would like 2 benches.
This is Frank. I can't imagine that cost would be a CIP item. I would think
Yeah, I
maybe
was gonna
something,
say that, Frank, yeah.
yeah.
So how much can we cost that out before the next meeting? Can somebody cost that out for us?
Yeah, or I was gonna say, does Bronwyn have, some kind of quote since she's asking for it? So we can understand how much it's gonna cost.
I will reach out to Bronwyn tomorrow to discuss. We've had some conversations of southeast as well, and then northeast, and some of the upgrades going to come into 2023 and 2024. So I'll discuss with her ASAP.
Counselor Cepeda Freitas.
I thought, and please correct me if I'm mistaken, but I thought she was describing what she was going to utilize the ARP funds for, and that included adding some benches to some of the branches.
No, that was the Wi-Fi part.
But she also spoke of benches. Because I remember there were two figures. There was, let me see if I have it here in my notes.
Hi, this is Frank.
6,000 was only for Wi-Fi. There
I
was
think she said
benches,
about 6,000 for
was for
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi
Yeah,
specifically.
6,000 something. yeah.
Correct. Because her total request for ARP was $300,000.
I know.
And
And my notes show that she did discuss it during that time, but benches are like $200-300 a piece. So I think she brought it up, but I think that's something that we can work with from the general fund. But you're right, Johnny, it was brought up during that conversation, but
Right.
I'm not sure intent was actually to have ARP funds for that.
well,
I
I
think
had
that's-
asked what were the ARP funds going towards? I was.
Oh, you're
because
right.
She requested 300,000, so she was breaking it down in terms of what she needed the money for. I remember our conversation where I had asked, in order for the library to sustain itself as a whole moving forward, what was the amount of money necessary? And that's where we started a conversation about seeking additional funds from the county commissioners to support and sustain the library moving forward. I'm sure once we review minutes, watch footage, et cetera, I'm sure it'll all be cleared. Or if we ask Bronwyn, I'm sure we can get clarity on this matter.
And we can look at her internal requests and then, just decide where it should come out of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have no doubt that we can cover the cost of a couple benches. I have no doubt. Just as we're wrapping up and on the subject of part-timers, the accounting manager had come requesting to get a part-time assistance in the accounting office specifically to help with our clerical issues and create additional layer of internal control, so to speak. We currently only have one accounts payable clerk who is processing all invoices and checks that come in through the city. We have our two accountants and then the accounting manager, and that's it. So to the extent that we could also bring on a part-time person, which would likely be a college student similarly situated as Maria, that would be super helpful.
John Moore, if I may, so the money that we're allocating for contracted services under your department, what would those positions be for, those temporary positions? Because I know you said you're having a hard time filling in certain vacancies, but if you can refresh my memory on those vacancies.
Yeah, I said that would pay the finder's fee for finding us qualified candidates. So we currently have a project accountant position that's vacant and a project manager position, formerly the revenue manager position, that is also still vacant. We almost had a candidate on Friday through an agency, and that candidate was offered double. So by Monday, they were no longer interested. With that, that's all we have tonight for parking lot, for law, charter, and ethics board. Of note, we still have at least one outstanding fund, the solid waste fund, that we do need to circle back to at a later date, now that we have those bids in. Counselor Cepeda Freitas?
Yeah, I was just curious. It just came to mind. I remember some time ago, the issue with credit cards. Where would that be reflected? Does every department have a credit card issued? And how do we track that so we don't come into the same situation that was identified some months prior?
Well, so we weren't particularly at fault with anything under the credit card audit, just to be clear. All of the department directors are issued cards. Some of the division managers have cards for specific reasons. Those costs get charged to all of the various expense accounts that you see here for relevant purchases, but there's no special line item for credit cards. And again, those expenses get reviewed monthly for reconciliation by me. And if there are issues, we send them back. And if there's a red flag, I run down the hallway to the managing director's office and let him know.
What role does our auditor play with the credit card? She also reviews, correct, Maria?
No, that's an administrative function to my knowledge.
I do not review the credit cards if an audit need to be conducted, and that's something that if we do an audit this year, we shouldn't wait 2 to 3 years to do another audit. I think we should be consistent, at least, to make sure everything is in play, is in compliance, and everything is and we following the internal control. That we have, the city has, the administration has, the city has the internal control in place.
I was just surprised. I really thought that was part of the function of the auditor's office, just to the checks and balance.
No, not the credit cards, the administration, the accounting department review those ones, as Jamar mentioned.
But as was done this year, the auditor's office can do a spot audit at any time. And I would love the chance to explain all the expenses next time.
I mean, and that's right. I mean, moving forward, if an audit need to be done every year on credit cards, I would be more than happy to do it.
Just seems a logical thing to
And
do.
just so we're clear, I keep a list of everybody with a credit card. I have all that information at a moment's notice. So it's never a mystery for me of who has a credit card.
But I mean, I just think that's a good checks and balance, especially from the council perspective, that is the, fiduciary stewards know what's going on. I don't know how anybody else feels in the council about that.
Well, that's a post-budget discussion. I mean, if somebody wants to add it to the committee of the whole and discuss it in the future, we can do that. But as it relates to tonight's budget discussion, I mean, obviously it ties into expenses, but as it relates to the auditor, unless you're tying it into the part-time position there, I'm not saying you shouldn't talk about it more, but
I think we should discuss it, just, get a feeling from council, how they feel about it.
that's fine. I mean, we can bring it up at a future meeting, but we have to give Jamar sufficient time to be prepared, to talk about it. We can spend, I mean, it's good to do spot audits and things like that. But when we try to audit every transaction, we could drive ourselves nuts. So we have to be careful.
Johanny has a question.
Well, it's more of a comment. It's more of a comment. I mean, it's just for clarity. I think that, as elected city officials, we have fiduciary responsibility. So we are tasked, right, with voting on budgets, voting on matters, approving decisions. So it's always, we just have to make a bigger effort to be very clear, very transparent. So this is not to pick on any one particular person. We just want to make sure that we're doing our jobs right and that we're representing the people who elected us in the right way.
But part of fiduciary responsibility, we got to avoid fiduciary gridlock too. That's the other side of it. So I agree. We want everyone to be held accountable, but we can drive ourselves nuts. Coming from a large operation that I used to manage many years ago, believe me, we did spot audits where we felt we needed to, if something drove us down. Jamar already does a set of audits. And the other side is we do have to have some trust in the mechanisms that are in front of us, or Jesus, we'd be auditing everything. Every sewer bill, every water bill, every trash bill, it becomes, it has to be a certain balance. And I'm never against audits. I just want to make sure that we're not overreaching and we're not, we're doing something in a healthy way. So it's doing what we're supposed to do, but within the realm of, a productive world. Because I've seen this, we can turn into gridlock if we have to look over. It's like I have to double check every one of Fred's opinions. I have to check, we can drive ourselves nuts. So, there's a balance to everything, including government and including oversight. I used to bill about $900 million of billing a year. I used to oversee it. And it's a lot of money. And, we use reports every day that flag things, and we knew when there were exceptions that kicked out, et cetera, et cetera. And then we did, our own little internal audits to spot check things and make sure that they were right. We had warranty tables and pricing tables and inventory controls and pricing files, all these things. And, and if we had a little mistake, I used to tell my coworker, we're 99.8% accurate, and that's pretty darn good. We're never going to be perfect, even with all the eyes on things. If we double check everything every day, we would never get the work done, unfortunately. So, I'm open to the discussion. I just hope we go into it with the right balance. I think there's value in doing some spot audits, but controlling everything is not the solution either. Any other comments on that? So Donna or Johanna, you could talk to Linda about getting that on the agenda and make sure Jamar has enough time. Give Abe notice because it all goes through Abe. All right, I think that's it for the budget for this evening. Is that right? Are there any other questions
Jeff, are we having an executive session this evening?
regarding?
The Fifth and Penn, the RFP process.
I don't know. Is Fred ready to discuss that?
I think so. I need a little more clarity. So, but we should definitely at least, I have questions I need to ask you that would be privileged. So I would want to speak to you in an executive session because I'm not 100% sure. And I did speak to Lucine about this. I'm not 100% sure exactly what the question is, but I can at least answer one of those, one of the two potential questions.
We can stick on the Zoom call. We can just stop the recording, go into executive session. I think everybody here is okay to be on. I don't have a problem with who's on the call here. Just so we're all aware of what the questions are. Anybody opposed to that? No. All right, Linda, can you, so we're going to adjourn this committee, the whole budget meeting, and we're going to go into an executive session on a legal matter involving land sale, right, Fred? Property.
Yeah,
sale.
correct. It involves real property.
Yeah.
Potential sale of a real property.
Yeah. Okay. So as soon as Linda gives us a green light, we will we'll open up the we'll turn the floor over to you, but we're still recording at this point. And we're still on Facebook. We're off of Facebook. Just got to shut down